Hey everybody, we are coming at you live. Well, I guess I say we. Normally, Abby's here with me. Today, you just get me. Abby's on a jet plane heading to Japan. So I'm sure we will hear from him, and he'll probably be doing some live streams of his own while he's in Japan with Tony, who's one of the other founding engineers of Mastra. So today, what do we got on the docket? Well, we're going to talk a little bit about the Mastra.build hackathon, do a little update. We're going to have 3 guests come on today. The first is going to be someone from MCP.Run. So we're going to talk a little bit about MCP. Why? Of course, if we're talking AI agents, we should also talk MCP. We're going to talk to my co-founder, Sam, who wrote the book on AI agents. We'll talk a little bit about how he wrote the book, why, and it's back here on my shelf right there. I'll go grab it in a little bit and we'll talk through it. And then we also have a guest coming on from Smithery. So that's what we're doing today. Thank you for tuning in. And first, just a little thought for everyone out there. I want to share a recent tweet that I just read for the first time, and I'll give you some of my hot takes on it, but happy to hear yours in the chat. So whether you're watching on YouTube, LinkedIn, X, Twitter, whatever we're calling it these days, please comment on what you think, and we'll talk about it. All right. So let's talk about this tweet here from Matt Pocock. Hot take. I've found that AI is better on large, mature code bases than toy projects. Depends on good context management, of course, but being able to point AI at existing implementations is a lot easier than starting from scratch. I'd say this is kind of nuanced in my opinion. I don't know that I completely agree, but it's something we should talk about. I think that in general, if starting from scratch, you can get further faster. Now, that being said, that's really good for prototypes, but it often breaks down. Where if you are actually working on something pretty complex, you're kind of building the patterns as you go. So I can really see the value in having a large scale code base to point at, especially for specific examples. But I do think there's a lot of nuance here. The biggest thing that I've found success when dealing with a larger code base, specifically, monorepos, is you do have to, because there is so much context, you do have to guide it. You have to know the code base enough to guide it on where it should actually be looking. And if you do that, then you give it specific code examples, you point to the specific parts in the file where it should be looking, then it can do much better because it does have the examples to build on. However, if you don't know the code base that well and you just expect AI to know the code base, I think that's where you start to run into problems. So definitely useful. Curious what you all think in your chat or in the chat. Please send a response and I'll share it if it's interesting. But we are going to have a guest come on here in a few minutes. We're going to have a guest from MCP.Run, and we will be talking about some cool things working with MCP.Run, working with Mastra, and we will see what we can build. We always want to, in these things, we always want to spend a lot of time building. And so not just me talking or Abby talking when he's here, but also actually looking at code and learning a little bit more of how do we build and deploy AI agents. So before we actually bring on this guest, let's talk a little bit about what is Mastra.build. So Mastra.build is a hackathon that's going on right now. The goal is to build some really cool AI agents. If you watched the live stream yesterday, you got to see one example of an agent that really kind of takes your, your logs from Chrome and can do interesting things, help you actually improve your, your websites in general. And go back and watch yesterday's live stream if you're curious on what people are building in the hackathon. Go to Mastra.build. There's still time. The hackathon goes till Friday. So you can still, if you've been working on an agent or you're considering working on an agent, there's still some time to submit something cool. Everyone that submits something at the end of the week gets prizes. We've had, I think over 300 people sign up for the hackathon. We'll see how many submissions we get, but we're expecting a lot. But we are giving out the book that's in the background here. Everyone gets that book. We're going to talk to Sam later about that. But you'll get that sent to you, and there's a whole bunch of other prizes. Lots of prizes on the line for people that even just submit. You get entered into some raffles, and we'll do some cool things there. All right, so let's talk a little bit about other things going on in Mastra. I had an interesting call today with a customer, and they're kind of building an AI-powered video editor. It's really cool. I'm not going to share it because I don't know what stage they're at and if they want to share that yet. But it does. It is really interesting for a lot of reasons, because one of the things that came up in this call is something that I've been hearing really often. And that is, it's still really confusing on how to connect agents that are kind of set up as a back-end service, right, to various front ends. And oftentimes these are Next.js sites, candidly, a lot of the people we talk to, but could be websites. Web is a very popular use case for front ends. But we've also had people do desktop apps, mobile apps, and the interactions, the user interactions of how humans interact with these agents, they're very important. And I think we'll still really struggle with them. Jack had a question. Could someone share the Zoom link? There is no Zoom link for this, Jack. We're just live streaming. So if you do send chat messages, though, if you send a comment, we will get them. So please, if you have questions along the way, ask away, and we'll pull them up and answer them as we go. But I do think this problem, back to the conversation I was having earlier, of how do you connect the front end of your application to an agent in the back end seamlessly, is a really challenging problem. Oftentimes you think if it's just a chat interface, well, you just stream the result. But this gets more complicated if you start to add tool calls. Your agent's actually going out and doing things. You need to surface information, and it kind of depends how much information you want to disclose to your user about what your agent's doing, but some kind of surfacing of that information helps. This gets really complicated when you start dealing with voice agents, because if your agent has to go look up some information, well, you don't want the person that's talking to this agent on the phone or through some kind of voice interface to be waiting. And so I think this whole user experience of working with agents needs a lot more, needs to be improved a lot more. And I do think that, tools like Copilot Kit, Assistant UI, there's some tools kind of built into AI SDK, they get us part of the way there. But I'm kind of interested in trying to, both me and others on the team are spending time thinking, how do we make this even easier for people, especially if you're building with Mastra, but just building agents in general. So can I share the book name? Hold on. So anyone that submits will get the Principles of Building AI Agents book, written by my co-founder, Sam. He's coming on in a little bit. So if you want to learn more about the book, you can stick around. And with that, we have Steve from MCP.Run. So I'm going to bring Steve on here, and we're going to talk about what MCP.Run is, but also maybe what we're going to be building today. So give me a second here to pull him up. And you're in, Steve.
Hello, everybody. How are we doing today?
Good, good. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining the live stream.
Of course, excited to build something.
Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit about what did you have ideas for what you wanted to build today? And maybe before that, though, just what is MCP.Run?
Yeah, MCP.Run, I mean, primarily is kind of a tool calling platform, enriching agents or AI apps with all kinds of tools that leverage the model context protocol. So everything available on MCP.Run is MCP compliant, if the name didn't give it away. And we also have like a registry that you could publish your own MCP servers to. But beyond that, we let you actually install MCP servers from anywhere on the internet. So you could take a remote MCP that is maybe Sentry's native MCP server that they host on their own cloud infrastructure, and install it into what we call a profile on MCP.Run that lets you basically collect and configure MCP servers and bundle them into a single MCP server. So it's really easy to distribute that out to an MCP client, like an AI agent or a chat application like Claude Desktop. And in doing so, you're able to basically just configure a tool or a suite of tools one time, like log into Sentry or provide the API keys to Firecrawl, and then manage that profile as the MCP server that gets attached to an agent. And we'll probably demonstrate that kind of a deal today.
Yeah, good background there. For those of you that are just joining us, I know we've had a lot join since I started this stream a while back, 20 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago at this point. We are talking with Steve from MCP.Run. We previously talked about the Mastra Build Hackathon. We have my co-founder Sam coming on to talk about this AI agents book, and we also have another guest coming on from Smithery later. So what do we want to do today, Steve? What can we show people? What can we dive into? We always like on these calls to show code, right? Like dig into something that we can build together, that we can hopefully others can learn from as I am learning alongside you, and we'll build something cool.
Sure. I was thinking we could just spin up a simple Mastra agent and maybe explore some of the Mastra features, add a SSE MCP server, and have it make some tool calls that kind of connect a few systems and do some interesting things that MCP.Run uniquely provides, and just kind of see how that integration goes.
Sounds dangerous, but sounds fun. We do it live here,
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's see how it goes.
Yeah. So I'm happy to drive, or you can drive.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be great if you can drive, and I'm happy to give commentary along the way and ask questions.
That sounds great. Let me bring up a screen.
Yeah, you should just.
I'm just gonna go through bare bones, starting with nothing, running Mastra in it, and all that kind of stuff. And
I think it's useful to. Do we have a goal of what we might want this agent to do? Sometimes it's useful to set a goal, and maybe we won't accomplish it in the time that we have, but we can get close, or at least.
I think we'll be able to accomplish it. I have a goal, which is, we sell a lot of our solution to AI agent companies and people who are integrating tools into their startups. One way we find some of those customers is by searching for latest AI startup funding rounds, and so we could build an agent that helps do that research, find on the internet announcements or news about startups that have raised new rounds of funding and are growing, and track their names, maybe the funding amounts and their progress in a Excel spreadsheet, and then do something with that data. Maybe just for fun, we can add another sheet that plots those things on a chart, just to kind of visually see maybe over time the announcements and maybe the levels of funding. So I'm not sure if that'll all work flawlessly, but
I mean, let's see what we can get done. And also, as we hopefully find some unique startups, and then if anyone knows anyone at these startups, you can just get them to come on the live stream if they if they're doing something cool. So it's you're helping me find future guests, Steve. So I like it. Let's build that. Perfect. Let's build an agent that I can take and use that to find who we should be talking to, who's doing cool things in the AI agent world.
All right, I love it. All right, I'm gonna share my whole screen. So apologies if you get the little infinite loop here for a second.
Yeah.
Coach me through. I'm gonna do Mastra. Actually, it's an NPX. How do I get started?
Yeah, if you do, you can do npm create Mastra at latest. And if you can go ahead and zoom just a little bit, give me at least three or four clicks, maybe
better or more.
Two more.
Boom.
All right, that should be better for everybody.
All right, let's do it. Let's call this Mastra build demo. While this is running, maybe I'll grab a API key, and I'll just temporarily stop sharing my screen to do so.
And we did get a question from Jack Yeah, in the YouTube comments, is there an open source UI that we could use to connect internal MCPs as
I missed the last half of that. I don't know if my audio cut out or if I got disconnected.
Yeah, sorry about that. So Jack asked a question: is there an open source UI that we could use to connect internal MCPs as well as external MCP? So I think there are, as far as like if you're talking about front end UI tools, there are quite a few things that you could start to look at: Copilot Kit, Assistant UI. Those would be areas to maybe look at. I don't know if Steve, if you have any other comments on how you would think about that. I think there's a lot of ways you could answer that question. Maybe some clarification is needed.
Yeah, I don't fully understand the question, but that's just me.
Yeah, I would say ultimately what often happens is you connect an AI agent to an MCP, which could be, if you're saying internal, as in like you download the MCP, there are packages that you download and run the MCP locally, or you could also external MCP using like server sent events or HTTP requests to an external MCP, and typically you can connect your agents to that. And then I don't know if there are some front end tools. I know Copilot Kit's doing more things to show like tool calling in the UI, but I think that's a loaded question, Jack. So I don't know if we fully can answer it. But feel free to add some more clarification.
Yeah. In the meantime, I have kind of just the core Mastra agent with a little example. Set up this weather agent. Why don't we just edit the weather agent and make it kind of our research? We call it our like startup research agent.
Yeah, the most common thing I do in all my when I'm getting started is I just take the weather agent and start from there. So this is my workflow as well.
It's a great starting point.
Yeah, I mean, if you can, sometimes remembering syntax is hard. So
Agreed. Don't need memory for this guy. At least we could add it later, but for right now, I don't believe.
Yeah, keep it simple. Keep it simple, so we're more likely to work then, right?
Exactly. What I do need though is our MCP client config, right?
Yeah. Did you add the? You need to install. Yeah. So let's install Mastra or at Mastra/MCP, and then that should install that, and then there should be an MCP client. Okay. Yeah. There we go.
All right, so I think we can do it out here. Let's call this like client. Is this like a? Yeah,
it's a class. Yeah, you need to do new client, and then there are some options. I think you need like it's like a server. It's an object with server, and then you name the server, and then you can pass in like the URL. But I'll pull up the docs so we can.
Oh yeah, servers. I think you're right. It's like the name of it. Maybe let's call this like MCP.Run, and this takes like a URL, I think. Yeah. So I'm gonna just pull this in via. Let's call this like MCP.Run SSE URL. What don't you like about this? Oh,
string. Yeah.
Fine. I like it. Types helpful.
There we go.
And then we add like tools here. Is that right? With
Yep, and then we would want to await MCP client.get tools.
That's right. Cool. All right, so we don't have these tools set up yet, but like maybe let's do that first, and then I'll be able to get my SSE URL after I create my profile, which is the collection of the tools I want to then give the agent. So I'm going to switch gears here and go on to MCP.Run. Everything around tool installation or MCP server management is kind of condensed into this idea of profiles. And the profile is, like I mentioned, a place to install and configure your MCP servers. So let's create a new one here and just call it Mastra Demo. It has nothing in here installed by default, but we will take advantage of at least one of the built-ins that we provide. We offer free access for web research. So kind of like building your own deep research agents. You can just flip on the switch and now web research is here. And then we also wanted to add Excel. So I can install Excel into my Mastra demo profile. And when I do this, it's going to bounce me out, do an OAuth flow, and install Excel into this profile. So now I've got Excel installed into Mastra demo. I was already logged into Excel 365 Cloud, so that was kind of like a behind the scenes situation. But you would otherwise just click authorize MCP.Run, and it would bounce you back, just like your typical.
Yeah, just a standard OAuth flow. Right? Yeah.
Yep. So now we've done is actually click stored Excel OAuth access credentials into this profile securely, so that we can then take this single profile and provide access to it through SSE. And of course, outside of Mastra, forgive me, but we also would support these SSE URLs inside of any MCP client. So Goose is popular, Windsurf popular, Cursor, Cloud Desktop. Eventually, many things will be MCP clients, and you can use these tools portably anywhere. But because Mastra's done such a great job about adding a MCP client, we're just gonna be able to copy a URL here, which is a secret, effectively, because it does carry some like profile and password information. And I'm going to paste it inside my env.development. Okay, let me actually stop sharing real quick to do this.
And while you do that, for those 120 plus of you that are now watching, we are talking with Steve from MCP.Run. We're trying to build a web research agent with Mastra and MCP.Run to basically go out and keep track of when some of these new AI agent startups are getting funded. And the goal being, just to learn about these companies, so Steve can reach out, talk to them, and we can get them on this live stream. Right. Among other things, among just like building a cool example.
Exactly. Okay, so I've provided the SSE URL. I just copied that straight out of my MCP.Run profile here. Just to recap again, we have Excel and web research, which is a built-in. We also have another built-in, which is really helpful. Maybe we can take advantage of this in a quick edit if we get far enough along, which is that we also provide you with free email sending. So now you can give your agent the capability to just send email to yourself or to anybody else with an email address. You do take ownership of sending that email, so it's like from you, just avoid spam, but kind of a neat thing. So we'll try that. What I also like to do inside of these agents, if I have a place to kind of put a system prompt like these instructions, is say like today's date is, I think I can just to string this. Just to make sure it's kind of like fetching, actually truly recent information. And I'm going to say, use your tools to carry out the user tasks as they request them. And then let's just run this, and maybe we can use it in the Mastra UI to see if things are working.
Yeah, it's good to test. Yeah, I always find it's nice to test early. That way,
Exactly.
And we do have a tradition here. If it works the first time, everyone gets to take a drink of whatever's near them. And for me, it's an energy drink, but whatever it is, so because it almost never.
I'll pretend.
Well, you will have to pretend. For those listening, if it works the first time, that's a success. It rarely does, so it's worth celebrating.
All right. So how do I run this thing into the?
Yeah, you can just run npm-run dev, and it should hopefully just fire up. And you did copy in, I'm assuming. Or not. Well, everyone doesn't have, we don't have to take a drink. It didn't work.
It didn't seem
missing export.
Oh, do I need? Oh, you know what? I think I didn't change this here because
there you go.
A research agent now.
Well, that's why it's the mythical thing that never happens. There's always some small thing that seems to be missing.
Yeah,
No,
that was user error. That was my bad.
It's almost always user error, Steve. It really is. It's funny enough.
Certainly when I'm in charge. Okay, cool. So what do we have here? We have our agent. We clicked into the UI for the startup research agent, which was produced from the code. And we have access to these tools, which is great. It's showing us that we've got our web research tool. It's showing us that we have Microsoft Excel and a bunch of the tools within the Excel server. And those are, again, all just provided through that single URL, through this combined kind of virtual MCP server, which is built up in the profile by installing other MCP servers straight into it. So now let's say what we want to do with this thing. Let's say find some recent AI startup fundraising news, and let's say track the company name. By the way, this is probably too small. Sorry for that.
A couple
company name.
That looks better.
The amount of funding raised, the source article, if we can capture that, and maybe say one other thing, maybe find the website URL of the company too. Say this info or it in a new spreadsheet, and let's say called startups, and track each of let's say track this info in rows. I have to add one more tool, which is actually the OneDrive tool, which is the way that Microsoft 365 actually creates new files inside of Microsoft Cloud. So let me just install this thing really quickly. As easy as clicking a few buttons. And then I'm going to copy this prompt.
Yeah, copy the prompt.
And we should have OneDrive somewhere. Where?
Maybe
so
if you refresh it.
You know what? We got to restart the server.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you refresh and doesn't show up, because it probably invokes and caches the URL.
It makes the tool call one time. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. For a lot of things, if you were, there are certain things you can do where you don't have to restart, but adding new tools like that, you typically are going to need to restart. And there it is.
There it is. Cool. We actually also send, based on the MCP spec, the tool list updated notification. And so I think it's just a matter of the SDK you guys are using supporting that, but eventually we should be able to do this without a refresh, because we send down the notification from the server, from our server, that says, hey, there's new tools here every time you add something new to the profile. So
and so we also got some comments. So one, by the way, is this really live? Can you see the comments? Yes, we can see the comments. Yeah. We will respond. And also MCP support is really nice. And one more question while we're taking a quick intermediary break. What is SSE? Could you explain what SSE is?
Oh, yeah, of course. So MCP, Model Context Protocol, specifies a few different official transports. It is transport agnostic in the sense that I could talk between a server and a client across anything. It could be across the internet. I could do an in-memory transport. I could write literally on a piece of paper and hand it off to my friend, and they could read that piece of paper and invoke a tool call and then write me some paper back. You wouldn't do that, of course, but SSE is one of the official specified transports, and it stands for server sent events. And it's just a way to create kind of this long-lasting over HTTP connection that allows a server to stream back information to a client, including things like tool call results and data from an MCP server. There's also the HTTP streamable version of this transport. And then initially, MCP released the standard IO version of the transport, which lets you talk to tools locally on your machine. But things are trending in the direction of moving all remote so that cloud systems can offer MCP servers to clients as well. it looked like there was a problem with one of the tool names, which is surprising. So I'm just going to remove web research and see if that one is the one that has issue. And we can add something else to it.
And and there's also, we should be able to, if we await the tools, we could probably update, we could probably get the tools, update what tools we pass in, and then, so worst case, we can probably find a way to get that to work. But
let's just see if this now runs. I don't expect the search to run. So it was not that one. I wonder if this is related to, we did have an issue with the string names, but I don't think it's the same issue.
What if we just to really isolate it, what if we, in our code, we just grab one of the tools that are, I wonder if it's because there's like a period in the tool name. Because it was MCP dot.
Oh, yeah.
So I wonder.
Change that real quick.
Yeah, let's try that and see. And then let's refresh. Now let's try this thing. Okay.
It's not the proper name for this model.
Yeah, so we got to figure out what that. They should give you type completion, I think.
It does.
Yeah. All right, there we go.
All right.
We are getting there. It definitely didn't work the first time, though.
No one's taking any drinks.
Yes, no one is celebrating with us. It did not work the first time.
Okay, this looks like it started.
All right.
Great. So we know it's not going to do any searching because I turned off the web research tool. Let me just turn that back on. We'll go through this once more. Luckily, the tools are fast and the dev loop is not so long anymore.
Yes.
It's way too big. Okay, now we should be able to try this. And see it work. Okay.
Let's see what happens.
Cool. We call it our research tool.
So it's doing some research. It's doing something.
Doing something for us.
We are further along than we previously were. While this is running, for those of you that have joined recently, we're chatting with Steve from MCP.Run, and we're trying to build a startup research agent. So we're building the agent in Mastra. We're using MCP.Run for a whole bunch of tools to go out, search the web, add it to an Excel spreadsheet, and yeah, we're gonna see what we can get done in the next, I don't know, probably 10, 15 more minutes.
All right. So once this is done, we should have a file in here. I'm just getting this all open and ready. Oops.
And even better, maybe we can just put this up on GitHub afterwards and share it out. So if anyone, if anyone wants to see what we built, wants to expand upon it, help us get more startups into our loop of people we want to talk to here on this live stream.
So yeah, let's just recap what it's doing. We asked it to find recent startup fundraising news, track the companies, their funding, source article, and the website of the company, and then store it in a new Excel sheet called Startups to track this information. And it has done some research, and it has found a bunch of information about AI startups. It went to go and attempt to create a new spreadsheet called Startups, and it looks like it did do that. You realize that there is no worksheet in order to add the information to, so it is trying to add the worksheet, but it does not seem to be doing a good job with that. It's realized it made an error trying to call the tool and is recalling it. Thinks there is a worksheet in there, but let's check the file. Okay, so we do have a startups file. At least that worked.
We got some.
It hasn't had the data yet. So
yeah,
it's still working on something, but it looks like it's done. Doesn't it look like?
Yeah. So I think what often happens here is I wonder if it ran out of steps. So if you go in the UI, because if you look, there's 5 or 6. There's probably 5 tool calls.
Yeah.
We count 5, and so I'm pretty sure the default the max steps gets set to 5. which means that it probably, you know, you can basically tell it how long you want it to run. You can give it a really high number if you scroll down, or maybe it's in the extended settings underneath the model settings. It's kind of hidden on the right sidebar there, right above your tools. Yep, scroll down like 4.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah, let's change the max steps to 50. Yeah, let's just let the thing run.
Let it rip.
Yeah, we'll burn some tokens. We don't care.
That's okay. All right, let's try it again. It's doing its research.
We'll gladly exchange tokens for time, right? That's
exactly.
What's the exchange rate of tokens for your time?
Yeah.
All right. So hopefully now, since we gave it some more steps, hopefully it'll do, it'll loop longer and hopefully figure out its errors here.
It's kind of funny to watch these things try to use like non-optimized software, and they just figure it out eventually.
Well, the funny thing is when you think about it, though, what about when you try to use non-optimized software? You kind of have to click around and figure something out.
Yeah.
So it is
version of it.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know if I hadn't used Excel that much, I'd probably have to stumble around quite a bit too.
I actually do stumble around Office, like just the Copilot 365 platform, like regularly. So the fact that it ever even gets anywhere is great.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So it found the existing file that it already created in the past run. It found the worksheet that it created. And now it's trying to find the rest of the information that I asked it for, which was go find the website URLs for those companies that it sourced in its initial research run. So now it's doing more research about each of the companies that it found. Let's take a look at which one of them's Unisoftware for financial planning AI. It found Hyperbots in Bengaluru. Cool. Indian company. It found Tune Sutra, a website URL Webtoon app from Google's AI Futures Fund. Vigil. Are these real?
Hey, if you know someone at Vigil, it's a meme generation platform. Let's get them on the show. This seems like pure great content. So Vigil, where are you at? You need to come on. We will. Let's see what kind of memes we can generate.
So it did make a call. Let's see if it put anything in here.
I'm going to do my own research and see if these are real.
So let's say we okay. Unisoftware is in stealth mode, so we can't find their website. But Hyperbots, that's real. Cool. Tunestra, legit. Oh, that was neat too. It did an auto resize to make the data a little more presentable inside of the worksheet. Vigil, look at that. Very cool.
All right.
Oh, and it applied some formatting. Okay, that's very cool. So yeah, job done. Nice work. Bot. Good bot.
Yeah, that was pretty cool though. I mean, even how far we got in what, half hour?
Yeah, less if we cut out the chatter and the banter and the setup.
Yeah, I mean, if we were just, if you're sitting alone, you could have done that in 10 minutes probably.
Totally. Yeah, we could try that one additional step, which is to see if we can have it make a chart based on what it found. Just let it do some visualization.
We have like 5 or 10 more minutes.
All right, let's see what it does. Let's say use this data from the spreadsheet to create a chart for the data. I'm not going to give more information than that. I'm just going to see what it can do. Come on. Let's say use the data from the startups spreadsheet. I bet you if I didn't delete the memory feature, it would have stored the ID of the file. Probably the name of the file.
Yep, that's a good call. Yeah, I bet if you wanted to have follow-up questions about it, yeah, if we would to re-add memory to our Mastra agent, it definitely would have been able to likely not have to do as many tool calls, right?
Yeah.
It could have just used that context.
Cool. This is another kind of neat thing. I always appreciate these little, nuanced details where it found two sheets in the spreadsheet, one called sheet 1, which is just like a default, and one called AI startups. And it looked up both the data in them and realized sheet 1 was empty. So I must use the AI startups sheet for generating the chart. So it added a new worksheet to put the chart in. It made a mistake and is now realizing the mistake and creating a chart data worksheet. And then it is updating the data in chart data, hopefully to put a chart. It's now going to create the column to put the visualization in and add the chart. I don't know how to make a chart in Excel. Like, I will be transparent about this. So it's pretty nice that AI can help me here. And it's running autofit again to make it neatly positioned. And look at that, we have a chart data. Cool. And it shows that Unisoftware got 4.4 million, Hyperbots got 6.5. The other two were not disclosed, and that is correct. And it even normalized the data a little bit. Sweet.
All right, this is pretty cool. I will never make a chart in Excel again.
Well, we did it. We
did
built
it.
an agent that helped us do research and plot that data for us in Excel. So
yeah. Can we you want to upload that to GitHub? Make it public?
Sure.
Can we share that
totally.
out for those of you listening or just tuning in? We just built a AI research agent that will go research funding rounds for startups. We did it in about 30 minutes, but a lot of banter, some messages from the chat filled in there, a few human errors along the way as per usual, but we did it. That was pretty cool.
Totally. One question I want to answer here by Jack, that it seems like MCP is meant to consume more tokens, is actually the inverse, right? An MCP server helps you minimize the amount of tokens the model consumes because the MCP server is running in like compute land. It's not using GPU, it's not using the model. The model suggests that a tool is called. And when the tool is called, then that's done completely outside of the context of the model or the LLM. What does consume tokens is feeding tool call results back into the model, which helps the model then carry out the task you asked for it to begin with. So it just depends on what kind of data is coming back from a tool and like how many steps that the agent takes calling those tools and feeding that data back. So there's plenty of ways to kind of tune the dial in the direction of reducing the amount of data or filtering it in the MCP server side before you feed that data back to the agent or model. But really, MCP servers help to reduce the amount of tokens used because you would otherwise have to generate code using the model that consumes tokens, where that code would then need to be executed somewhere to do like a web request to some API, and it would have to know how to use that API. So MCP servers really actually help, I think, reduce the amount of tokens consumed if the agent is doing something useful.
Yeah. And we do have one other question that I don't even know if I fully know the answer to, but I will do my best. If maybe Steve, if you know. But at what point does Mastra hit MCP.Run to load the available tool lists? So in dev, what we found out is when you run the dev server, it seems to hit the URL, get the available tools. I guess I would assume that when you deploy it, it's kind of the same thing. Like when that function's invoked, it should go out and get the tool. It should load it in, but
yeah, so it's right here, right? When we instantiate the agent and we await this get tools call, then the MCP client makes a request to the server based on wherever this SSC URL or the HTTP endpoint is located, and we await the response. And the first response is the result of the protocol's tool list request, which is just the JSON schema of all of the data that represents the tools, their names, the parameters they expect, and the tool descriptions that describe what the tool is supposed to do and how to use it. In the protocol, there are other steps that the servers can and should implement, which notify a client of new tools made available to them. This is all just so new that most clients don't have the support to handle the tool update list notification, but it is possible. And we do, as a server, send that notification down to a client. So as more of the clients mature and implement more of the spec, then you won't have to restart the agent. It can just get new tools delivered to it by updates from the server, which is pretty cool.
That actually like brings up a really good point. I think at some point in the future, we need to have a live stream where we just talk about the MCP spec in more detail, because
Cool.
I know enough, but I know there are a lot of things even at Mastra we don't currently implement in the spec, and most MCP clients don't, right? They're not fully spec compliant. Actually, I don't know if any of them are.
I don't know of a single open source one that is fully compliant.
I think even, my experience with even Claude Desktop, there are things where, they're not necessarily always working the way you'd expect for, someone who built the spec, right? It's a moving target. So I don't even blame them, because we're all trying to chase the same target and building things as things are still changing. But it would be a useful, I think, time to go into a deep dive on what are the other things in the spec that people aren't implementing yet or really haven't even thought about. I know there are like prompts and resources and just a whole bunch of things that we're starting to implement, but we haven't even got there yet.
Totally. 100%. Well, let me know if you do that stream. Would love to jump on and bring some more knowledgeable people from my team.
Happy. Whoever you think is your expert on the spec, and maybe we'll bring some more people on the Mastra team that know more about the MCP spec than I do. That would be a fun future conversation. So we should do that again.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for having me. Nice to chat with everybody here live. Go check out MCP.Run. I'm hanging out in the Discord all week for Mastra.build, so please reach out to me if you have any questions or need some help onboarding. Tools are free. Go use them and enrich your agents with access to the outside world.
All right, Steve. Thanks for coming on. All right, and with that, for those of you that are just joining us, we have been talking about the Mastra.build hackathon. Go to Mastra.build to learn more. We had a guest from Steve from MCP.Run. We just built an agent that does startup research or startup funding research. It could build us a spreadsheet, and it created an Excel chart, which is something that I now realize I no longer have to do, which is great. Also, Steve, if you're still listening, please send me that GitHub repo when we make that public. I will share that hopefully on the live stream before we end. So if anyone wants to download the code and see how it works and play around with it, you all can. For those of you in the chat, if you have questions along the way, whether you're on LinkedIn or you're on YouTube or you're on X, just send a comment. We'll see them. We can't answer every question we get, of course, but we try to answer a lot of them. And with that, I'm going to bring up our next guest. So this guest I know pretty well. So this is my co-founder, Sam from Mastra. Let's bring him on.
Hey guys.
Sam.
Good to see you, Shane.
Yeah. Are you at the Palace of the Dog right now?
I'm at the Palace of the Dog. I have arrived at the Palace of the Dog here, which is, our I'll give everybody a tour of the Palace of the Dog. You're seeing it from a different angle, and we don't have our Palace of the Dog our Palace of the Dog poster up right now. I'm just sitting in this chair, which has become notorious for just being the chair that I sit in. It's also a large chair. I just think better when I sit in a recliner for some reason that I don't really understand, but yeah.
Hey, if it works. But you're at Mastra HQ. So, Abby's on a jet plane. You're at Mastra HQ, and I'm here sitting in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. But I'm excited today to talk a little bit about the book you wrote while in YC. Not only is YC hectic, but you also decided, hey, we should write a book at that same time. So for those of you tuning in, Principles of Building AI Agents. Actually, if you want a copy, go to mastra.ai/book. You can get a digital copy. If you want a physical copy, it's very simple. Just buy it on Amazon, or better yet, go to mastra.build and sign up for the hackathon and submit something. Submit some kind of agent that you built with Mastra.
We will send you a book.
Exactly. I'm glad you have your copy too. Everyone.
We have a couple boxes of books, and we had to make an emergency pit stop on the way to Japan, so that we could bring 150 books to Japan. So I had to have a friend make an emergency pit stop here last night to pick up another 150 books and
Nice.
get
So
them on
he's just
the
like
way.
he's just like paying for luggage, and it's just books.
Yeah, it's just books. It's books. He's shipping 150 books in a suitcase to across the Pacific Ocean right now as we
Yeah.
speak.
It's funny. We also had someone who came to the apartment and got, probably, I don't know, 50 or so books and just shoved them in a suitcase to bring them to a hackathon. And what
Yeah, he tweeted
college?
out. He tweeted out at Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
He tweeted out like feeling like Pablo Escobar, with the suitcase of books, which was we appreciated that.
Yeah. So yeah, if you are running hackathons for building AI agents and you need some books, let us know. We might be able to hook you up. No promises, but we can talk about it. All right. So yeah, I'm going to open the book, and maybe I'd like to talk about a couple things. First, let's talk a little bit about some of the things in the book. What were we thinking when, you wrote it? And let's also maybe talk about what's next, because one of the things I always hear, when we give people this book is, isn't this out of date the minute you print it? And so let's talk about that and what we're doing to try to like help prevent it being out of date the moment it goes to print.
Well, so the first thing you do when you're an engineer is you set up your data pipeline, right? And so we discovered that you can, like, Amazon has a printing service, and you can just upload new copies of the book whenever. So I'm actually working on V2 over the weekend, and we should have it live, pretty soon on Amazon. The origin story for everybody watching, like, Shane and I were sitting in this very apartment about like 3 months ago, and we were just kind of like, we'd been bringing folks to the apartment to do like these whiteboarding sessions where people would kind of like go, and we would like, here's our whiteboard, here's our whiteboard. So on that whiteboard, we were we would just kind of like have people whiteboard out their architecture of their AI application or agent or assistant. Where's the data coming from? Like, what are the decision points you need to do? And usually over the course of a 45-minute session, we would kind of have like 2 or 3 key unlocks where, like, oh, well, what if you, instead of making one LLM call to, maybe what if you broke to like diagnose 12 symptoms? What if you broke that up into 12 separate LLM calls, or like, something like that? And over the course of having these like 20 or 30 different conversations, it just kind of felt like a lot of what we were doing. So some of the stuff was like very specific to the particular use case. But some of that, we were having a lot of the conversations over and over again. And it's a normal thing when you're an engineer writing docs, right? It's like, if you have the same conversation over and over again, yeah, maybe you should be putting that in the documentation. But then we're like, well, what's the documentation for building an agent? Like, okay, maybe we should write the documentation for building an agent, right? Like, and so we kind of like think about this as like the documents, and like, if you think about like what is, you kind of break down content into like the how-to material. Like, here's the actual code, that you would use to do a thing. But there's also like there's also sort of the conceptual, like, what is the concept here that this code is like the reference implementation of. And so we spent a lot of time just kind of like thinking about like, hey, like, what are all, and like, luckily we'd actually thought about this for Mastra too. We have like, what are the primitives of AI engineering: agents and tools and memory and RAG and evals, and tracing, and et cetera, right? So like, and then like prompting, and like, what about models and providers, right? Like, and so like, we already have a very like clear sense of like what all the primitives are, and then we kind of like codified that into sort of a table of contents, and then like kind of generate it. Then sort of like we're able to like, I just kind of like locked myself in a room for like a couple weekends, and then like wrote the book basically.
Yeah. And it's funny, you mentioned during YCS having all these people over to do whiteboarding sessions. So I'm gonna share. We actually, we had so many people that we built an agent that took a whiteboard picture and turned it into an Excalibur. And unfortunately, we built it towards the end of all these whiteboarding sessions. But as you can see here, like, we have a bunch of pictures from random startups coming over and just, whiteboarding with us at the Palace of the Dog in the dog patch in San Francisco. So yeah, there you go. So I do have
times.
So I do have some questions on specifically on the book, and I think it kind of ties into, you're doing a talk at what's the conference you're doing a talk at here pretty soon?
AI.engineer, the World's Fair AI Engineering Conference in SF that our old friend Swix is running. 3,000 folks are going. Like a lot of, Greg Brockman is speaking. A lot of like really cool folks are speaking. I'm also speaking. The topic is agents and workflows. Why not both? OpenAI had a blog post that was kind of a little bit, not very friendly towards. There's like a speakers, I think for whatever reason, that's like the mobile version. If you click speakers, then and scroll down for a while, then you get to me. They had so I was actually just talking, and Dex was like, "Oh, you're gonna be there, yeah, Dex, we're gonna be there, and he's gonna be there too." I have a lot of friends speaking at this conference as well. The talk is called "Agents or Workflows? Why not both?" Because one of the there's been a lot of controversy around like is an agent just a workflow graph that you chain things together, or is an agent more than that? And some people are weighing much more on one side, some people are weighing much more on the other side. And I think the talk is just kind of like, you need both of these things. Like, this is a dumb argument.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think, it made sense for people to lean, and I think it changes over time, right? Like it's a sliding scale where maybe, 6 months ago you almost had to use predominantly workflows to get anything done. Now you still need to use a lot of workflows, but maybe you can turn more control over to an LLM to make decisions and route things. And then maybe over time you can you're less reliant on workflows, and you can even turn more of the decision-making process over to just a really well-crafted system prompt.
Yes, I 100% agree with this.
And I also think that, if you're already spending all this time writing this really detailed system prompt of do this, then do this, it's like, why even leave it up to chance? If you can get that specific, if you always do these things under these conditions, why not just turn that, especially if you can use AI to turn that into a more discrete workflow.
Yeah.
We have all these AI tools that can help you write the code for it.
Yeah, and I think like what people often don't realize is that like there's different types of agentic capabilities and you need them like differently. Like I was just talking before this call to someone who was like, "Hey, like do I need a planning loop?" And so a planning loop is where you have like an agent running in a while loop, and the agent can create tasks and this subtasks and so on. And I was like, well, we see some people using it. The people who are using it are usually building coding agents. If you are not building a coding agent, you are unlikely to need that sort of full flexibility in production, that full flexibility kind of like agent planning loop. Or you're sort of like less likely to do that. So like it's kind of like, but like this is the kind of nuance that like maybe we see because we just talk to a bunch of people building different kinds of agents that you might not realize when you're getting started with it. And so like this is the kind of color and detail that again like we kind of put in the book.
Yeah, I think it's really useful, and I think it's one of the conversations that I have the most is like how much control to give the agent versus when to use workflows. And how do you think about, I know I have suggestions I give to a lot of our customers, but how do you think about if someone's just getting started, should they start building a workflow first? Should they start with an agent? Should they start with an agent network? I mean, or a network of agents? How do you think about that?
I think it's useful to sort of like to play around with all three things, right? Like before going really deep on each one. If you're not sure where to land, like generally the way that like I tend to advise folks is like if you're sure you need like really fine grained control, use a workflow. If you want like a lot of power, like go agent or multi-agent, right? It's just a sliding scale of where you want to be on this scale.
Yeah, I often tell people like if you don't know, just start with a single agent and a good prompt and work on the prompt, and then you're going to probably quickly realize that the accuracy isn't good enough for certain things, and then you pull off those certain things into workflows or specific tools, and you can kind of like slowly kind of slide the scale. Or if it's, you need it to be even more flexible, maybe you start to add more agents to the mix. But it's almost like start in the middle and then like slide a little bit one way or the other, depending on what the tasks you're actually trying to accomplish.
One of the things that people say they've appreciated most and they were like surprised most in the book was we gave like about, I don't know, 20 or 30% of the bold.new system prompt. And it's just this incredibly detailed, you probably can't read this, but like you can just kind of see by how small the text is and how long it is. Like this is a very incredibly detailed system prompt. Um, and I think like that's surprising to folks because um, people think about, oh yeah, I wrote a couple paragraphs, and like in production, you might write a couple pages. Um, in fact, I was just on a call with someone I can't share publicly, but they're a prominent, I'll say they're a prominent startup shipping an agent, shipping an agent, and they sort of like at one point in the call they like screen shared part of their system prompt, and it was like again it was like a page or two. It's sort of like the detail and depth is detail and depth in the system prompt is important, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, just like if the system prompt is kind of, you have to spend like an excruciatingly large amount of time on that one specific thing. Kind of like if you were building a whole system, but in this case, a lot of the system is kind of codified into one prompt, which could be very large, right? Which is also, I think one of the challenges too is there are, of course, prompting guides. There are some techniques you can do to ensure that, you get the right prompt alignment and all those things. But it is a little bit like the Wild West. People are experimenting with things and finding out that certain things work and sharing those tips. And it's a little less, because it's not deterministic, it's less defined and less clear how to structure these prompts. So the best way is just look at other examples of how people are doing it and actually having success with.
Yeah. 100% agree. And I think that like one of the things that there's a lot of intricacies that might be specific to your situation. But there's a lot of things that are general. So I think I just encourage folks to, you know, sort of like, hey, ping us in Discord, right? Or like ask us like, hey, I'm doing this particular thing. And it's like humans are the same as agents. The more context that you give, like the better the response is, right? And provide a lot of context about what you're building and ask like, hey, like do you guys think this is the right architecture, right? Ask us on Discord, ask us on Twitter, like just talk about like we just talk about what you're building public with us and public with others that like have AI engineering experience. Talk about your architectures, like and like we're all like I think one of the other big lessons that sort of like crystallized from the book and from YC and in my mind was that like a lot of us are just doing this together. We're there are a lot of very talented engineers who are becoming AI engineers and it's sort of like it's just a new domain. The same way as DevOps used to be a new domain, the same as data engineering used to be a new domain. There's some weird things and some intricacies, but at the end of the day, it's just a new domain. And there are unique things about the domain that you're kind of like learning and picking up along the way. That like you learn the fastest when you're learning in a community of practice. Or a community like a community where you're all kind of like building together. And if you're sort of like out isolated on an island by yourself, like not reading blogs, not reading sort of like not using tools other people use, you're just going to learn slower than everybody else. Because the only reason that people who are learning fast is because we're learning together.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why if you are looking for people to learn alongside, go to Mastra.ai and scroll down to the bottom, click the Discord link, and just come into the Discord and tell us what you're building. We'll try to help you out. We're all learning this together. We're building things on shaky foundations right now, right? The whole space is moving really quickly. So we're all trying to keep up and all trying to build really interesting agents and agentic applications on top of models that are changing and tools that are changing all the time, specs that are changing, which I guess follow-up question now. What are some of the underappreciated parts of the book? Do you have any topics in here that you think people are either not spending enough time on, not haven't either got there yet, or maybe they're not focused on enough?
I think underappreciated parts right now is RAG. RAG is not dead. Contrary to like expectations. I was just, this is just a dumb example, but I was searching on Amazon, my Amazon order history yesterday, to try to reorder my trash bags, and I searched garbage bag and nothing came up. I'm like, I swear I've ordered this. So then I deleted garbage bag and I typed in trash bag and it showed up in them. Okay, so then I reordered my. Like, come on, this is Amazon. Like, it's semantic search on my order history, and like Amazon hasn't got this right. Like, like RAG is not dead because like this is a dead obvious use case. And the biggest company in the world with the most resources has not yet, shipped it, right? RAG is not dead. So I think like the chapter in RAG is like useful to just like think about like, if you have search in your application, could I have semantic search? What would that look like if I had semantic search in the application that I'm working on?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, come on, Amazon. Let's get someone from Amazon on the stream. Let's talk about getting semantic search added to the order history. You know, you'll have to pay a few tokens, maybe.
But I mean, it's also just funny because like they have Amazon Bedrock, right? Like it's not like they don't have the infrastructure to do this stuff. Anyway, come on, Amazon.
But that's one of many examples. Yeah, I would agree with you. RAG is not dead, but on the flip side, I'm finding more and more people are able to push off moving to RAG for longer.
Yeah,
because
there's also something really interesting too, where it's moving towards like, and we'll have some of this in the new edition of the book, like tool augmented generation, where you sort of give an agent access to tools to fetch data. And so like you could think if you have like a medium sized,
still RAG, right? I mean, that's
it's still RAG, but
RAG.
like technically it's RAG, but I do think it's like different enough that like we kind of coined this term like tag, like tool augmented generation. We also called it MCP augmented generation, which to be fair was like really just us feeding the Twitter trolls, and like we should really call it like tag instead of mag. But like our investor Alana Goyal like published a blog post on like her personal website MCP server. Like I would go take a look at that if you're kind of curious when you have like a medium-sized corpus of data, like a website, or maybe just something, then like you just feed it into Gemini and you don't get any good like analysis on it, and you want to like give an agent some tools to like analyze it in a meaningful way. Tag is kind of really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that as you can just turn over some of the control to the agent to do its own research, whether that's using a vector database, whether that's using a traditional database or some other kind of, search tool, right? It's providing a similar, it's trying to do the same things. It's just a different mechanism to get the data into the context. I will say, so I was talking to someone at a meetup last week, and, they had compared a RAG solution compared to just using Gemini's long context, and they, I would say they got less latency just sending a whole bunch of data into the context window, and so they were able to like decrease latency and increase accuracy by just using more of the context. So I think it does depend. There are cases to be made for both, but I think it's no longer. I think RAG was just a thing everyone grabbed right away as soon as you need some kind of outside knowledge, and now it's it depends on the situation, and you honestly,
it's a little bit more nuanced and sophisticated these days.
Yeah, and you have to probably test. You have to test the assumptions, right? Probably have to try both approaches, and depending on what your goals are, you'll see which one will fit better, depending on the amount of data you're dealing with and what types of data.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I gotta hop to 1 o'clock, unfortunately. So you may want to phase me out and bring on the Smitheries.
Yeah. We'll have another guest here joining pretty soon, and thanks for joining, Sam. And we will talk to you later.
Okay. Good to see everybody here in the street.
All right, Sam. Thanks for joining, and I think we will have Henry from Smithery joining here soon, so we will get him queued up and joined in. For those of you that are just joining, we have been talking about the Mastra.build hackathon, which is going on now. It's not too late it's going on all week. So if you wanted to build some kind of agent everyone that submits something will get a copy of Sam, who was just on, his Principles of Building AI Agents book. We also talked with Steve from MCP.Run. We built an agent that can do research, can go out and find AI startups that have gotten funding. It built an Excel spreadsheet. It built a chart. And we did that in, about 25 minutes or so. We built that whole agent and got it running. And we'll try to get we'll post in the comments. If I can't get it from him before the end of this stream, we'll post in the YouTube, the Twitter, and LinkedIn comments, so you can have a link to that code if you want to pull it down, play around with it on your own. And we do have some comments that we can kind of follow up on while we are waiting for our next special guest. So we have this comment from Adebayo. I believe I'm pronouncing that. I'm not great with pronunciation, so hopefully I got your name right. Can you throw some more light on the Mastra client SDK? So we do have a Mastra client SDK, and it essentially allows you think of when you're building a Mastra agent or Mastra workflows, you essentially get a REST API server. You're deploying these things you can deploy them in a completely separate environment. So you have almost like an AI backend. If you do go down that approach, then we have a client SDK, which you can add to your front end so you can more easily communicate with your backend agents, your backend workflows. You can trigger a workflow, watch its results, show something in your UI, all through using the client SDK. Now, there are other approaches. A lot of people also, they have maybe a Next.js site and they want to bundle Mastra within that. They don't want to use it as a separate API. They want to actually just bundle it in the code. And you can do that as well. And in that case, you don't necessarily need the client. You can just interact with the code directly. Just call, just load your agent, call agent.stream, workflow.generate, and you can trigger all those things without having the client. So the client is really, if you're kind of going with this kind of separate approach where you want to separate your AI infrastructure or your AI backend from your front end client. And this is, we do have a lot of customers that are building, desktop applications, that are potentially building mobile applications, or maybe have a website and a mobile app that are communicating with the same agent. And so this kind of client helps, especially if it's a JavaScript or TypeScript type project where you can just use the client and interact with those things. And let's see what else we got for questions here. So a few comments here. This one's, as the system prompt gets long and detailed, I've seen that AI agents don't really follow the path. So as of now, we're sticking to good workflows decided by agents when to pick which workflow. Yes, I've seen that same kind of thing where you essentially you have like a router agent and you give it a set of tools, which maybe are specifically like well-defined workflows, and it can do a good job deciding which workflow to run, but maybe you can't give it all the tools in the tool belt, right? You have to have more defined, discrete steps in those workflows. And so I've seen that a lot with some of the projects that I've been working on, but also a lot of the customers that I talk to as well. And with that, we do have Henry from Smithery joining us. So let me get him pulled in. For those of you just joining, we've been talking with a couple guests. If you know of someone else that we should be talking to on this live stream, someone you'd want to hear from, let's make it happen. Send me some information, make a referral. You can find us online. We are around. All right, Henry, are you there?
Hey, yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, the video is a little bit broken up, but it looks like it's starting to come in now. So hopefully everyone the audio is coming through great though.
Awesome.
All right, Henry, can you maybe a quick introduction would be a good thing, and then we'll talk about some of the things we can maybe demo, and then some Q&A I think would be great to have as well.
Cool. Well, I do have a slide deck that you can bring into view if you want me to kind of show that.
Yeah, share if you want to share it.
Kind of yeah, I put it as share.
Yeah, there should be a share, and you can just share your tab or whatever, and we should be able to pull it up, and everyone can see what we're looking at.
I already shared it. I think you have to, as a host, you have to let it in.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're still new around here. There we go.
All right. Okay. Hey, everyone. Hold on. All right. Went to the back. Okay. So my name is Henry. I'm the founder of Smithery. I had a previous startup. I exited from that. And today I want to talk a little bit about sort of the origin story of Smithery briefly, and then show a little demo of like what you can do on Smithery as a developer. So this all started, last year, towards the end of last year, when I was playing around with the Arc AGI challenge. I was trying to solve this kind of AI benchmark puzzle using reasoning models. As I was trying to solve this challenge, one interesting thing about this Arc AGI challenge was that it's very easy for humans to solve. If you look at this puzzle, it's pretty easy to guess what the third sort of prediction should be. But it's very hard for modern LLMs to solve. So towards the end of last year, when O3 kind of released their benchmark, they completely destroyed this puzzle. And I was like, okay, I guess AGI's sort of achieved. We have reached like human level performance on math. We're kind of done, right? Like we can just pack our bags and all go home, right? And so when January came in 2025, I was like looking around and asking the question of like, well, if AGI is here, where are all the autonomous agents? And so what we really have is like this Claude's paradox, right? We have like models that are getting smarter on these benchmarks, but they are not connected with the rest of the world. They're kind of disembodied, like this picture I'm showing here. And what we really need is that we need to provide models with the right inputs and outputs. And this is essentially what MCP is. Like MCP was established in November last year. I started tinkering around when MCP was just released. It was a small but vibrant developer community back then. Now it's a lot more mainstream, but it's still very early. The protocol is still being developed. And MCP kind of promises to be sort of the USB-C for your AI agents, allowing it to get inputs from the outside world and outputs applied to the outside world. The problem is that the MCP doesn't really solve all the problems here. It's kind of a fragmented ecosystem, as some of you who have dabbled in MCP might have known. There are a lot of MCPs out there. You kind of have to go on these lists back in around December to kind of find MCPs. Installation is pretty hard. And also, like it could have like a virus somewhere. So that's where Smithery comes in. We're trying to solve this problem of defragmenting the ecosystem of MCPs by providing AI gateway for agents to access all the tools and contexts in the real world. So our website, well, this is an old screenshot, but I'll show you in a bit. Our website gives you kind of a curated list of MCPs as an end user to use, but also as a developer, which I'll show in a bit. And yeah, we're processing about 50,000 tool calls a day now. Yeah, so let me jump over to change my screen into a, to make it more of a demo. Can you allow that? Okay, it's working. So, this is our landing page. It's kind of made for both users of MCPs and developers. So let me just show you what it looks like if you want to use an MCP in your agent application. So let's say you go to an MCP. Let's say we want to add search into our kind of AI agent through Mastra, of course. What you can do is you can explore the catalog of MCPs on Smithery. You can play around with tools. For example, I'm looking at Exa. Exa is a search engine. You can play around with the tools. So these tools are like what your AI agent would see in this tool list. So for example, I can search for any query here, and the Exa API will process this through the MCP. It can then return the MCP and give you this result. This result is basically the string that your AI agent would see. So to integrate this, just click on the API tab. We have some SDKs that you can use. We use the standard Streamable HTTP transport, so it should work pretty smoothly with Mastra as well. And if you're on Python, we have a tab for that. But we recommend TypeScript.
We're not anti-Python, but we're definitely pro TypeScript.
Yeah, I'm also pro TypeScript. Yeah.
Can you zoom? Can you give one more zoom, like one click of zoom on that? Because
sure.
Just so everyone can see it. That's a little more helpful. So it's kind of cool though. So you're saying you have this interactive playground, so you can kind of test the tools before you hand them to, and whether it's like Claude Desktop or Cursor, or obviously if you're building an agent with Mastra, you can test it here, make sure you're getting the results that you want, and then pass those in, or turn those on and pass those in.
Yep. Yeah, I guess before I go on, anybody have any questions about how to use MCPs on that are deployed on Smithery?
Yeah, if you are tuning in live, we are live. So whether you're on LinkedIn, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on X, just drop a comment. We'll see it. We'll answer some questions along the way. And if you have questions on how to use MCPs with Smithery, if you have general MCP questions, bring those up as well. Happy to field those. I don't see any questions yet, but I imagine in a few seconds we'll probably get a couple. So we can probably continue on, and I'll pull up any that we get along the way.
All right. Well, feel free to interrupt me when you see a question. I guess moving on, if you're lazy and you don't want to pick what tool to use, we've built this tool in-house called Toolbox. And Toolbox is just an MCP that actually calls all the other MCPs on Smithery. And your agent can use this function to search the entire registry to figure out which tool to use. And your agent could use this to dynamically invoke any tool on Smithery. And similarly, we have this kind of code snippet to integrate into your agent. So that's kind of how Smithery will work if you're kind of consuming MCPs as part of building your agent. You can also deploy MCPs as a developer. So let's say as part of this hackathon, or maybe in the future, you want to submit an MCP into the registry. We have sort of a Vercel-ish experience where you can find a repository. For example, I will connect to some a reference sort of server that we've developed on GitHub. Let's call this GitHub 3, and we can click create. And what this does is that it would sync into your GitHub repo. It will start running a CI/CD and deploy and host your servers automatically. So this takes about a minute, and once it's done, you have your own server page that you can kind of give to other people and allow other people to use your MCP. So in summary, we have like two ways you can use Smithery: as a consumer of MCP or as sort of a developer trying to help other people by creating your own MCPs. Any questions you caught, Shane?
So I have some questions. So one, is it possible for us to show this hooked up to, I don't know, Cursor or Claude Desktop and just show how easy it is? And I know a lot of people are building agents, right? So if you're building an agent, you're going to pull in MCP. But also, I think there are, maybe some people who aren't as familiar with MCP don't understand that a lot of the tools you might already be using, there are useful, potentially, MCPs that you could add into those tools to help them along. And one example of an MCP would be, we at Mastra have a MCP docs server. And what that is useful for is if you are building a Mastra agent in Cursor or Windsurf or VS Code, that any tool that supports MCP, you can just add that in. And then if you ask specific questions about Mastra, it'll actually look up the information on the docs and it stays up to date. So the benefit there is, as we know, training on these models happens at a point in time, right? And so depending on when the training happened, it's only going to know a certain amount of things about Mastra or any other tool. And so by having a docs MCP server, you're always getting up-to-date docs, and it can do a much better job helping you write code.
Yeah. So you wanted sort of a kind of a in the client sort of demo, right? So
yeah, it would be great to show just whether this is this could be Cursor, or obviously we're looking at Claude Desktop here. But
so
how does MCP actually work?
Yeah, so I guess one example I can show is just now I talked about Toolbox, right, which is like an MCP that could search other MCPs. So I could ask questions like, what's happening today in SF, and it's kind of a vague question, so we'll see if it works. Usually it's useful to have a prompt that like teaches your agent how to use MCPs. Let's see if this works. So with this prompt, ideally what it should be doing is it'll kind of check for a tool that can handle this request. Okay, we need to allow this. So in Cursor, you will have a similar kind of interface where it will search for servers if you use Toolbox or any other MCP. And let's see. All right, so it did a first pass search on Smithery. It was able to find a couple of MCPs. Let's see. Oh, wait. Hit the maximum. Okay, I think the context window is busted for this particular query. because
Yeah.
maybe I did not pay for Claude Pro, but
yeah. I mean, yeah, no worries. I think, but the idea here is you are able to add this toolbox, this to Claude Desktop, ask a question. It was able to then execute that tool depending on the context of your question. And in this case, go out and do a search, but it could be, could be many.
Okay, I have a recorded video demo, which kind of worked in the past. So in this example, same example here, let me skip forward a bit. So this is a different client that we kind of prototyped during a hackathon. So what happens is that it would be able to find sort of MCP that's relevant for this particular use case. So this is kind of like an agent, chat-based agent. It's able to use the tools, and you can also post this. You can also connect to Slack. So this is a different MCP, like Slack MCP. So you can imagine agents being built to be kind of connected to different services, different integrations, in order to actually solve real problems. So that's what we're hoping to see. Kind of people built on top of Smithery.
Yeah. Do you have any? So there's a few general questions about MCP, but I'm curious. What are some of the? You obviously talk to a lot of people using MCP and using Smithery to build, interactive AI applications or agentic applications. What are some of the use cases you've been seeing that are exciting to you?
So I think the most, obviously there are the integrations, which are kind of, you can think of them as like foundational building blocks. Without integrations, you don't have access to a lot of apps. But perhaps the more interesting MCPs are the more AI native stuff, like the stuff that did not exist as a traditional API, right, before MCPs existed. One example is sort of this like clear thought server. What this MCP does is that actually it doesn't provide you with any integration, but it actually provides you with a bunch of like thinking frameworks. So when Claude or when your model goes and use these tools, it kind of constrains the kind of way the model thinks. By for example, in sequential thinking, it kind of forces the model to do a dynamic and reflective problem solving. So you can think of this like as a sort of like prompt plus plus, because the prompt is actually also a program that kind of guides the way the model solves something. So this is kind of useful if you have a predefined way of solving a task, right, that you want the model to use. Another example is like things like more AI native, like browser based, right? You're able to now get AI to control the browser. So yeah, those are kind of two examples I would like to highlight that are pretty cool in this more AI native.
Yeah, definitely. We've seen a lot of interest around agents that can interact with browsers, right? So you have browser base. Shout out to Paul. We need to get you on this live stream at some point. Browser use. We know the team around there as well, but some really cool interactive ways where your agent isn't constrained to just your environment. It can actually use a browser, and whether it's buy something from you on Amazon, which is with the demo that I tried to build, and it worked pretty well. Or whatever else humans use browsers for, right? Agents can interact with browsers. So I see a lot of interesting MCPs popping up around trying to use browsers with agents.
Awesome.
Yeah. Anything else that you wanted to chat about today, Henry? I'll see if we got any other new questions that have come in.
Yeah, I guess to just wrap up this little demo and talk. Obviously the goal here is to help all of you agent builders unlock today's agents to be able to do more stuff. But I think another interesting thing, perhaps more of like Smithery's vision, is like we also want to help bootstrap tomorrow's agents. There's this recently written essay by Richard Sutton and a co-author on how like we're entering this era of experience, and it's a very well written article because like it kind of talks about how all the LLMs today, they've been kind of trained on data on the web, which are sort of like human outcomes, right? But what we want to be going towards is a world where agents are learning from their own experiences, and sort of kind of getting agents to like really do stuff in the real world and collecting that data and kind of learning from that data. I think that's perhaps the first step necessary in order to bootstrap tomorrow's agents. So, this is like the era of human data where, agents are kind of learning from static information. but we want to get to a point where we have an era of experience. So yeah.
And is that the name of the paper, Era of Experience?
Yeah, the name of the paper is Era of Experience. I recommend reading it.
Yeah, I see it. I just did a Google search. Welcome to the Era of Experience by David Silver and Richard Sutton.
Yeah.
All right. I have some light reading to do now.
Awesome.
Well, Henry, appreciate you taking the time to come on, tell us a little bit about Smithery, a little bit about, or show some examples of how Smithery works. There's a lot of excitement around MCP, and we're trying to help others learn alongside of us, and so appreciate you kind of teaching us a little bit today.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right, Henry. We'll see you later. All right, everyone. We're about to wrap up. For those of you that have just joined, we've been talking about the Mastra.build hackathon. It's still going on. If you would like to build your first AI agent with Mastra, have you been thinking about it, but you haven't committed the time to do it yet, but are considering it, this week is a good time. It goes on till Friday, so there's still time for you to build something. Go to Mastra.build to learn more about that, to get signed up. Go to our Discord where there's a Mastra build channel. We're chatting about all the cool things that are getting built. If you watched the live stream yesterday, you'll see a really cool example of what someone is building. And we'll also have some special guests on tomorrow as well, showing what they're building in the hackathon this week. So more to come there. We also talked to Steve from MCP.Run. We built a little research agent with Mastra and MCP.Run. We'll share the code to that in whether you're on YouTube or LinkedIn or Twitter, X, whatever we call it. We'll post the link to that code here shortly. So follow up and we will get access to you for that. So if you want to play around with it and build upon the simple structure that we built, which was just go out, do some web research, finding the AI startups that have received funding recently, add it to a Excel spreadsheet and build a chart around how much funding they've actually raised. We talked to my co-founder at Mastra, Sam, about the AI Agents book, Principles of Building AI Agents. If you want to grab a digital copy, you can do that. Just go to, let me just put it here, mastra.ai/book. Go ahead and go there. You can get a digital copy. If you want a physical copy, it is on Amazon. Or if you submit anything for the hackathon, you'll get the book. So we'll send it to you. And last but not least, we also talked to Henry from Smithery, which, again, more information on how to connect different tools to agents. That is something that everyone's trying to figure out, because once your agents, once you can give LLMs tools, it can unlock a lot of different things. So that's it for today. Hope to see you all tomorrow. Hopefully we'll hear back from Abi. He should, by tomorrow, he'll have landed in Japan. So we'll try to get an update from Abi, who's not going to be here for a little bit, but hopefully he'll be doing some live streaming of his own while he's in Japan, talking to a lot of different developers that are using Mastra in Japan. But that's it for today. If you do have any other guests that we should bring on, any ideas, let me know. Reach out. You can find me on X. Go there, follow me, reach out. My DMs are open, and we will chat with you next time. See you later.